Hello and welcome to the Dinosaw for week 43. Another 7 curious, interesting things I saw last week, so let's crack on. First one is an update from Adam Varga. Adam works for Snap Inc., the people behind the spectacles, and if you follow Adam, you'll see occasionally he'll post these sneaky peeks behind the scenes of what's going on with development of latest features. This latest one is all around fitness, and as you can see, it's helping people do burpees and press-ups and all those sorts of things. So it's using essentially the computer vision in there to detect when you're doing jumps or whatever. And as you can see in the bottom right, there's also a sort of reaction test going on as well. So we often find it difficult to try and figure out what practical uses augmented reality glasses are going to have. Well, here's a really good example of something quite useful. So if you see people stopped in the street doing weird stuff like this, or in the park in the future, you pretty much know what's going on. And if you don't follow Adam straight away for more of the same. Google had a really nice keynote, it's very slick, to launch their new Pixel 6 phone. Yeah, it has a huge camera bump at the back, as we're seeing with nearly everything at the moment. However, they also had some really cool stuff in there. So they had their new UI system, Material U, which if you uploaded a background image, it would then base the entire UI around the colors that it would pick out of your image that you've chosen. So it's very dynamic. Amazing camera. I think there's 4 cameras in this thing, but they're horizontal across the back. Interestingly, the camera has some really useful features in there. So it uses what's called a tensor chip. It has a very specific essentially a neural net chip in there, so it does all the really cool AI stuff on board. So it can do things like it can do image rendering really quickly, it can do effects really quickly. It also has what they call their most equitable or most inclusive camera, so it does skin tones. So long gone are the days of it just working on sort of white Californian Americans. So now it actually is takes a decent photo of everybody, and it can also do things like, as you can see on the right hand side, remove unwanted things. So you just tap on the unwanted thing in your photo and it will remove it automatically, so it'll figure out what to put in its place. Obviously that's halfway through a transition, it actually takes it out. It has some really cool things as well, voice translation as well, again with this tensor chip on there as well, doing all of the kind of AI stuff on the chip. So it can do things like listen to the telephone call you're on, and if you're on one of those automated calls where it says press 1 to hold, press 2 to whatever, it can understand those and automatically turn them into interface items within the call itself on your phone. So so that's neat, so you don't even have to kind of listen to them and or press the buttons on your keypad. It'll actually turn them into a menu essentially, and it can do also real-time translation whilst you're typing or you're having a message with somebody, maybe in Chinese or whatever. So some really cool things, very powerful and really neat. So there you go, all caught up on the Pixel 6. Yeah, if you've got £16,000 or $22,000, I think it is, you can also buy the Jetson One. So this is the first kind of eVTOL, so the electronic or electrical vertical takeoff and landing, which is what VTOL means. So essentially it's a giant drone that you can buy for £16,000. So I did look it up, and that's about the same as a Toyota Yaris. So I'd rather have one of these, quite frankly, and it all folds up, so it'll stick in your shed and or garage. It does 63 miles an hour or 102 kilometers an hour, I think it is, so it's pretty zippy, and it'll do that for 20 minutes on a charge. So it's by no means super practical yet, but it'll carry about 85 kilos, so it's pretty much me, or a thin version of me with some shopping. So there you go. There are 2 tranches of availability for this. I think the first one is sold out. I think you can get that next year, but there is I think 3 chassis numbers. They're selling them as chassis numbers, so there are 3 available on their website for delivery in 2023. So if you're interested in who these people are, it's a Swedish company, and it has some cool features in there. So you're thinking, what happens when it goes wrong? Well, it's got 3 times redundancy on all of the flight systems apparently, and also there is what they call a ballistic parachute. So I assume when it all does go a little bit funny, a parachute will shoot out the back with explosives. So that all sounds perfectly normal. However, if you've got £16,000 to spare, head over to Jetson and buy one. There you go. This is really interesting. I actually saw this in the kind of car news, but I think originally it came from one of the UK red tops. But so this was a tale of somebody. I think they lived in Dorking in the UK, so it's broadly speaking London, and they were sent a fine in the post by the DVLA, saying that they, or whoever issued the fine, in Bath, which is about 100 miles away, 120 miles away, for driving their van in a bus lane. And it turns out actually it was just a lady with the word knitter on her top. Obviously it was a knitter, and the camera in the bus lane obviously recognised that as KN19TER, and therefore send this poor owner a fine. So clearly some messages were exchanged, some phone calls. Everybody saw the funny side of it and cancelled it. But there's just a constant reminder. We're not quite there yet with computer vision, and especially when we're starting to automatically send fines and inconvenience people with money. But there you go. So I thought that was quite an interesting dinner party anecdote. When somebody says they were sent a fine through the post, you can tell them this. There you go. This was quite an interesting paper. So there's a great thing called 2-minute papers, which is well worth subscribing to on YouTube if you're not already. It just gives you a sort of a really deep science look at somebody's new scientific paper. It's a much easier way to digest them. So this one is all about showing you how neural nets learn. And if you'd seen the one where, say, it's learning how to play Pong, or it's learning how to play chess, where you just feed it enough versions of the game and it can figure it out itself. And you're thinking, well, that's obviously it learns like us. It just kind of knows that the bat must go left and right and bounce the ball around. So what this is showing you here is it doesn't really work like that, and they're way, way ahead of us in certain things, because we like spatial form. As you can see on the left-hand side, there's a car driving through a track. Now, if you took each, I don't know, 8 pixel square of that and jumbled it all up, that's actually just being represented on the right-hand side. If you showed the neural net the stuff on the right-hand side, it could still learn how to keep the car on the track, which is what you're actually seeing on the left-hand side. So all it's being shown is a bunch of jumbled up squares, as you see on the right-hand side, and all it's really told is keep the car on the track, and it learns how to play it itself. So it's really interesting. The video is only a 2-minute paper, but it's well worth a watch if you're trying to figure out how these neural networks actually learn, and how they can take very sort of disparate and weird input and make sense of them. So it's quite interesting. There you go. So that's how they work. Not to be left out, obviously Google had their launch, so did Apple. So this was quite a curious one. It was a little bit lackluster, I would say, and as I say here, it can be summarised by the phrase, well, we did a U-turn. We probably got it a bit wrong. So you'll notice that the MacBook Pro, so this is the better one of the MacBooks. This is usually for the professionals, hence the Pro. So if you're a video editor or a musician or whatever, you just use it, you wanted it for power. Taking off all of the ports a couple of years ago was just a really daft move. So they've put, as you can see, SD card, they put USB-C, and it's now got HDMI again, so you don't need a dongle. They've also taken back the LCD keyboard, the touch bar as it was called, and put keys back in its place again. There's even a headphone jack, and they've even put MagSafe back on it as well. So it's nice to see that they've kind of admitted that they got it wrong, although they didn't admit it. These are all brand new innovations according to Apple. There you go. However, they've also confused the water a little bit with the M1 Max, which is, it used to get the M1 Pro chip, which is way faster than currently the Core i7 in the olden days iMacs. And so they've just made a whole new one of those, just to confuse you. The notch is probably, we should talk about the notch. So as you can see on the right hand side, laptops now come with a notch, which I think is the dumbest thing I've seen in a long time. Of all the things they should probably have not done, is the notch on a laptop. So if you're thinking why is that an issue, you just look at the top bar of your computer right now and where the menu goes, and Apple have said no, we'll put a black square in the middle of that. There were also some new AirPods, which broadly speaking are a bit the same as the AirPods Pro at the moment. And you are now caught up on Apple news. There you go. And finally, possibly my favourite thing of the week. So this is Fisher-Price, and they have reissued or issued their Chatter phone. So this was the classic, you've seen it in Toy Story or whatever. So this is actually a Bluetooth accessory for your phone. So you pair it with your phone, and it allows you to make calls. So obviously it uses your actual phone and its SIM to make the call, but you can put your finger in the dial and it has a rotary dial on it, so you can dial numbers just like the olden days. It has a little cord with the handset and everything, and rings. Can also be used as a speakerphone as well. So this is actually a growing trend called kidulting, which is where you get either nostalgia for old products and reissued. So the Chopper bicycle, for instance, is a really good example of this. But also we're seeing this harking back to a relatively crude technical age, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that. So you can also get a banana phone, like literally a banana as a phone. So there you go. So if you're interested in those, I think it's only available in, I think, Canada, America, and maybe Mexico. It's all sold out, but I think they're reissuing a limited edition run in October, so that should be nowish. Anyway, it's really funky. There's a really good review of it at the bottom, so definitely watch that. And it's really cool. And the eyes move up and down when you tow it with the piece of string that it comes with as well. So I think that's spectacular. I desperately want one of those. However, there you go. Hopefully that was useful. Hopefully that was interesting, and I will see you again next week.